Today I'm going to build the backend for our small project and I'll be using Spring. Spring is almost a no-brainer in enterprise environments. Just look at how many job openings there are for Java/Spring positions in your region. The way I'm going to do this is by setting up a contract test between the frontend and the backend. If you want to know more about contract testing, don't miss my upcoming videos. But in summary, I'm going to create a contract between the frontend and the backend, then run a test against this contract in the frontend, and another test against the same contract in the backend. This way I don't have to start the application every time I make a change. Let's start by building the contract test on the frontend. I'm going to use the packed framework for that. So now we have two tests. One for the post interaction, which is for creating a new record, and one for the get interaction, which is for retrieving data for the list. Now we also need a test for the delete interaction. This packed test has generated the contract, so let's take a look at it. It's basically a JSON file that describes all the interactions between frontend and backend. Now I'm going to build the backend based on the interactions defined in the contract. We also need the producer part of the contract test to verify the interactions on the backend side. So let's have a look at the test. I currently have only two interactions, because I added the delete interaction later. To include it, I need to regenerate the contract JSON by running the frontend tests again. After running the frontend tests again, the delete interaction has been added to the JSON. However, the response returned by the backend is not exactly what the frontend expects. So I need to make some slight adjustments. Now I have 3 tests on the backend, one for each interaction. Let's quickly look at the project structure. We have a controller, and an entity. There are some redundant generated attributes, so let's remove them. I've also created a bash script that builds both the frontend and backend and runs the tests. However, I want to integrate the frontend into the backend so that I can run everything in the same container. For this I need a resource handler on the backend, and I need to copy the compiled Angular files into the backend's static folder. I've also added a test to check whether the static files are being correctly served by the backend. So let's try out the backend. Now when I enter some data, it's saved to an in-memory storage on the backend. This means the data is now shared across multiple browser windows. Now let's look at the provider part of the contract test. Instead of storing data in memory, I want the backend to use a database. To do this, I've set up a Postgres Docker container just for testing. It will be automatically created and removed each time the test starts and ends. You can see the container being created here in Docker Desktop. After adding a few missing imports, this is our final version, and our backend is now capable of saving data into the database. We're finally moving on to the most interesting part, building the infrastructure. In the next episode, we'll set up infrastructure for our database, event source, and load balancer. And we'll perform zero downtime deployments using infrastructure as code. Be sure not to miss the next episode.